Our presentation today will be a book review of The Coddling of the American Mind. I will begin by summarizing the content of the book and the core arguments that it covers. I will then provide an analysis of what we have agreed and disagreed with. My partner Juan will then present on what surprised us and further questions that we have. Juan will then end our presentation with a brief discussion on its application within our churches today. So let's begin with the analysis of the book. So the book explores what Greg Lukianoff and Jonathan Haidt call the three great untruths. They're this. Number one, what doesn't kill you makes you weaker. Number two, always trust your feelings. And number three, life is a battle between good people and evil people. So according to the author, young people like myself have embraced these untruths, and therefore their social, emotional, and intellectual development has been stunted. These untruths are harmful to human flourishing. Since these things have been studied, there is the inability to mature into adulthood. The authors attribute the divisiveness of our country to this inability that results from these great untruths. After exploring the untruths, the authors jumped in so that we can see how they are enacted through intimidation, violence, and witch hunts throughout college campuses. The authors use examples such as Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville, the 2015 campus protests that called for the firing of a person who had written politically incorrect emails. The central point that the authors are trying to make is that speech is not a violence and that there must be diversity of viewpoints. The witch hunts that result in these untruths create a culture of safety starting in 2013. In part 3, the authors answer the questions, how did we get here? They explore the rise of effective polarization that causes a hate or fear of the other party. During the same time, anxiety and depression became more widespread, which made safety more appealing and caused colleges to see the world as more dangerous and hostile than it really was. Paranoid parenting during this time also psychologically primed children to enter into a culture of safetyism. These same students are the ones that also had limited free playtime growing up, thus making the art of association faulty since it was never practiced. Colleges have then corporatized this safetyism to please the students who they now view as their customers. Finally, social justice has become a popular concept on college campuses that favors equal outcomes justice over a proportional procedural social justice. This is what has led to our current culture of safetyism. The last part of the book, the author addresses where do we go now? They address how we should wise up our kids. They suggest prepare the kid for the road, not the road for the child. Your worst enemy cannot harm you as much as your own thoughts unguarded. The line dividing good and evil cuts through the heart of every human being. Help schools oppose the great untruths. Limit and refine device times. And support a new national norm, service or work before college. They then say how we can wise up our universities is to entwine our identity with freedom or inquiry, to pick the best mix of people for the mission, to orient and educate for productive disagreement, and to draw a large circle around the community. In conclusion of the summary, the authors talk about how these principles will create a wiser society that we can all live within. So as I begin to look at this text, we find it to be interesting that it is talking about us. We are both college students in whom this book is written about. I myself find that many of the things talked about in this book applied more so or were the result of the older generation, but it was put up on the younger generation. However, I did agree with this. I do agree that there is divisiveness that is present in our society today. The authors make this point very clear throughout the whole book. As a society, our ability to have mature conversations has greatly weakened. The authors talk about some of the events in part two of the book. My immediate network thinks very differently than I do, politically, socially, and theologically. This has made for some intense conversations as we try to understand each other. What do I disagree with? I disagree with the authors putting this culture of safety to be the sole responsibility of my generation to deal with. My generation is the product of the older generation. When we talk about the paranoid parenting, the inability for us to experience play, that forced this culture of safetyism upon us. We are who we are because parents were paranoid and they moved to the suburbs so we'd have a chance to interact with other children. So we were bored and went to the TV, which then made us anxious. We, when we went to college, we were encouraged to only go to the ones that we liked and thought like we did. The responsibility for wising up needs to also happen at the older generational level and not just my level. Juan will now explore for us what surprised us about this book, what questions we have, some applications in our ministry.
So I'm going to continue following what Dustin was mentioning, and I'm gonna talk about the things that surprise us, some questions we have, and I'm gonna share what we think the church should do concerning the topics mentioned in the book. So first of all, it is important to notice the contrast between generations. Each generation has experienced life in different ways, and each generation has been shaped by its predecessor. Older generations usually brag about the toughness and wisdom they had. However, generations like the one who experienced war, they have suffered a lot because of untreated trauma and mental illnesses. That generations went through very difficult hardships concerning mental health. However, that generation dealt with adulthood at a very young age, which brought many good outcomes as well. I think it's the contrast of these uh, two experiences that shaped the new generations coming. In this sense, the generation, that generation contributed to the safety focused generations we have now. Another aspect to mention is the high rates of depression and suicide thoughts encountered in younger generations. It is surprising because these generations have enjoyed safety and comfort the most. They have enjoyed the advancement of science concerning mental health. They have enjoyed the experiences of its predecessors. However, this might seem not to be enough, as statistics show the rise in mental health issues among teenagers and young people. It is urgent to address these issues and work hard to find a healthy balance where people can be safe but not overprotected. It is important to expose ourselves to different situations so we can overcome trauma or face adulthood in a better way. However, we are not going to throw ourselves at something we will never get out. So it really is important to find a healthy balance. I think if we take any of the two extremes, we will just harm ourselves. We have some questions as well. It is important to value all the solutions given in the book. It would be interesting to know the outcomes of the people who went abroad for a gap year and see if they change, mature, grew, or if they are the same, just with more countries to write in their cool countries to visit. Personally, we have met people who did a year abroad or even lived in a different country for years. And still, it seems they learned very little from that experience. Their worldview is so narrow, and they did not let other experiences take them out of their comfort zone. In this sense, a year abroad can be useless. I wonder if the obsession of safety is a result. We wonder if the obsession of safety is a result of wanting more comfort in daily living. I think in some way both are connected. Nobody loves going through hardships in life, whether financially, emotionally, or physically. We all seek comfort in those areas. Therefore, safety will be the means of protection for our comfort. When we see people who have gone through extreme poverty, we can notice that the hardships they went through became their source of strength. Of course, there are exceptions to this. However, those situations led these people to overcome fears and face life. Therefore, we wonder how much influence does economic status have over our emotional health? Or how can we have a healthy balance without falling in extreme solutions? What could the church do to address these issues? Well, we think the church needs to re-understand the differences between generations inside the body of Christ. Christianity has embedded its teachings the concept of safetyism, especially in the way we look at the world. We have attached sin to the world in such a way that we see the world negatively. Since we are supposed to be separated from the world in order to seek sanctification / holiness, we have distracted ourselves to understand other people's reality. The more Christian an environment is, the safer believers feel in that space. So as soon as they step out from that environment, they struggle. This is shown in how sensitive it is to talk about current issues like LGBTQ plus community, immigration, racial discrimination, and politics, just to name some. We are very defensive when we talk about these things, and we do very little to understand the reality of these people. Whatever challenges our understanding of truth or our standard view of Christianity, we immediately protect ourselves from that. The various generational standpoints regarding these topics are seen when we discuss them, and sometimes are not helpful at all, because each one of them thinks they are right in their opinion. In this sense, the role of the church is crucial, because it has the ability to provide not only a safe environment, but a place of free speech, where people can discuss these issues with respect and understanding towards each other. By doing this, we believe Christians will be able to mature and have an authentic interest to hear and understand people who think the opposite things to them. This is the starting point of loving our neighbor, the start of a path that ends in reconciliation and love towards each other. If the church keeps feeding the mindset of let's feel safe in what we believe, whether it's doctrine, denomination, theological positions, the church will keep contributing to divisiveness, immaturity, intolerance, and safetyism. Thank you.